Okay, greetings everybody. Today we are again on the campus of People's Church in Fresno, California and Fresno Christian Schools, and we're here today to talk safety. Now for 25 years we've been out and about showing you how to be safe in the workplace, and this year will be no different. You're going to hear about a 30-minute message regarding the subject. I think you'll like it. We're going to bring back some of our best hits from prior years, some of those clips that when I come onto your campuses, you stop me and you talk to me about. That's kind of fun. I'm glad you remember this stuff. So there will be a little bit of humor today. There'll be some great information. You know, church and school campuses are very busy places, and going about your work is important, but it's also important to go about your work and not get hurt in the process. So we're going to talk about a culture of safety today, and really safety begins with a culture of safety, and that has to come from the top down. It has to come from the senior pastor. It's got to come from the head of school. It's got to come from everybody. You can't get to a goal unless you establish what you want to do first, and so that culture is so important. At Dermanowell Insurance Group, we talk about changing the equation all the time, and that means how do you come up with what you're ultimately going to pay for your workers' comp? And it's a formula, and it's based on your claims, it's based on how safe you are, and then that determines what the marketplace will say about what you have to pay every year. So it's a big advantage to not get hurt. It's a big advantage to have good safety programs. It's a big advantage to care about this issue. We care about it. Our job is to make sure that you understand how to pay as little as possible for your workers' comp, and how you understand how to not get hurt at work. And so we're going to cover the situations that we see out there that are commonplace in churches and in Christian schools, and hopefully at the end of this session you'll have good information and you'll go forward with a personal commitment to be a part of a culture of safety and to not get hurt this year. We're here today with three of my favorite people. Reggie Sadler is our Southern California loss control consultant. Gabe Laurenti is our Northern California loss control consultant. And Matt Havens is the one that looks at all of the claims that we have in the workers' compensation program. So guys, we were talking earlier today, and what we really agreed on after you looked at all of our data is that the biggest problem we have in the Cornerstone program is that people get hurt just by walking.
Well, when I'm even just standing right here and just turning 180 degrees, there's 7 different surfaces that people can walk on. It makes me wonder how much of a factor the surface that is being walked on plays into the accident, as well as, of course, the shoe that is being worn at the time.
Like you mentioned, the seams in the concrete and the curbs and all that stuff, and then you bring in a cell phone. I mean, it's very easy to concentrate on what you're doing here in terms of texting or talking or whatever, but not paying attention to those things.
And so Matt, what kind of things are you seeing?
I am seeing trips and falls for no apparent reason, walking from the car into the building, falling in the parking lot, falling in different areas, spots of the on the grounds. Walking up and down stairs can be challenging at times.
Yes.
The most important thing is to maintain that sense of balance. We get off just a little bit. That's what's going to cause gravity to take over. Slip and fall, hit the ground, injury, work comp. You're talking to Matt.
Absolutely. That's right.
Kind of wondering about the distraction issues. So there's been a whole lot of attention paid to the issue of distracted driving. What do you think? Or do we have distracted walking going on out there?
Definitely. We have distracted walking, holding items while you're walking, texting while you're walking, talking, looking around while you're walking. The bottom line is you have to know your surface in front of you.
You know, I'm starting to think that maybe posting something to Instagram or tweeting or commenting on a Facebook status is probably less important than getting hurt, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's do one thing at a time. Let's get from point A to point B, and then whip out your phone and do whatever you have to do, make a call, text, whatever. But when you're doing that, in addition to walking from point A to point B, you get into trouble because we talk about surfaces.
We do.
We talk about shoes, and
So it's our opinion. I think we formed a consensus here that slips, trips, and falls are just the biggest problem we have, and that primarily is happening people just walking, and we think it's
true.
that they're distracted when they walk.
absolutely.
And so this is probably the easiest thing there is to fix, don't you think?
I would think so.
Yes.
I agree.
Okay, everybody, what's wrong with this picture? Let's go back down. Now you can see we're in a shop, but this problem would apply anywhere where we have extension cords going across aisleways or going in places where there's foot traffic. You see an issue with this? I certainly do. This is definitely a trip and fall hazard. So it's not enough to just tape over an extension cord. We have to have a bridge cord or something that will not allow a situation like this to occur. Look at this. These are the kind of things you've got to pay attention to no matter what part of the campus you're on. Whether you're in an interior classroom or whether you're outdoors, it doesn't matter. It could also apply to something like a garden hose that is in a high traffic area. This is just an unnecessary hazard that is easy to correct. Really no excuses for having this here.
Part of our inspection process is to look at classrooms and see what the hazards are in there, what they look like. And many times we come upon things that are up on the wall. And I always ask the question, well, how do you get these decorations up on the wall, close to the ceiling? And there's a moment of silence there. And I think the reason being is because we see teachers using chairs and tables to gain access to put their decorations up. There's a much safer way to do this, and is to use a step ladder. Our belief is that every classroom should have a step ladder instead of going to dangerous habits like standing on tables and chairs.
We just shot this scene with Reggie up on a table, and he's got one foot on a chair with some rollers on it. And this is the part where I come in and say, listen, if you do this, you're fired. You're fired. You're fired. Okay, if I am the safety police at your school or your church, and I walk in and see this, I seriously would fire you. That's just me, though.
Part of using this safe equipment is using a step ladder, what we have here. And here today you see that Reggie is moving the table in order to put the step ladder in the correct position so he doesn't have to go over it and create a hazardous condition for himself.
Okay, so it's one thing to talk about having the proper equipment and using a step ladder, but if you have the right equipment and you don't use it the right way, if you lean too far or if you don't set it up right, then you're really defeating the purpose of having this piece of equipment. Really, everybody on your campus who has to get up 2 or 3 steps should have access to a step ladder. They're $34.99 at any retailer. It's a small investment to pay for safety. Again, it's far more costly to have the improper equipment than it is to have proper equipment. But let me emphasize one more time. You're going to have to use this properly, and that means you don't lean outside of the legs or lean too far or stretch too far when you're using a step ladder. Ladies, really? I have just walked 10 inches in these shoes. My right calf is cramping. My toes have already turned black. I've almost fallen over 4 times, okay? These guys gave me $100 today to put these on because we wanted to illustrate something, and that is the absurdity of improper footwear in the workplace and the havoc that it causes. It causes, look at this, I can't even talk and balance at the same time. I'm gonna get out of these now, but this is a familiar sight, isn't it? Now maybe your heels aren't this long or this tall, but there's no way anybody could function in these. It's just impossible. So we're gonna take you back now to some of our prior segments on footwear just to kind of illustrate the point. Slipping, tripping, and falling is the #1 injury we see in churches and schools, and footwear is a big cause of that problem.
Let's help you out.
Hey, man. Who would wear this stuff? I don't get it. Bad shoes. These are bad shoes. You see what I'm doing here? Bad. 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 And bad. Okay? I know it's tough. I know the dress code is going to be the subject of ire and scorn and controversy and discussion, but I have to tell you something. The wrong footwear on the wrong person in the wrong circumstances can be an absolute nightmare for your ministry. It's time to deal with footwear. I had this document, the 10 dumbest injuries for 2000-2001, and I was reading them, and things like a secretary hurting her knee running from a bumblebee. An 81-year-old janitor falls off a roof. 24-year-old teacher gets hurt sumo wrestling at a staff retreat. PE coach breaks his ankle playing soccer. These are the this is the crazy stuff, right? A yard monitor joins a rugby game, loses 6 teeth. A music teacher files a stress claim after he quits, begs for his job back, and then they don't hire him back. So that's a stress claim. One of my favorites, none of these are really funny, but the senior pastor running through an airport because he's late for his plane and falls down and gets hurt. Yeah. But these aren't the typical things that we see. These are just freak accidents, and they all have one thing in common. They involve poor judgment.
Not thinking, people always say it's common sense. Well, if it was so common, then, we wouldn't have all the injuries we do.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gabe, what do you think?
No, I agree. I think it's basically knowledge and applying that knowledge to better the situation for yourself or for others around you.
I think so. A lot of the people that get hurt seem like they really care about not getting hurt. They just forget, They take a shortcut, maybe. These aren't bad people. They're not bad employees. They're not going to sue us. A lot of times they've been around for a long time, but they wind up being on the list. Certainly not if they're distracted. Like we talked about being distracted earlier. We showed a few examples of that, and they're definitely not thinking about the consequences of being distracted when they're doing that. That's a battle that is ongoing every day. What about people that have been working at a ministry for a long time, a church or a school, and they're just like somebody out on the maintenance staff, they've been there 30 years, and their body isn't the same as when they started.
That's right. Absolutely.
So what would you say to people that are working on the grounds crew or the maintenance, area that have those years on them? How would you counsel them differently?
Be extra careful. Consider your age. You're not as young as you used to be. Don't take shortcuts. Think about what you're doing.
And I think along those lines, just the time element, in their mind, they could do that task in their younger years in 2 hours. Now, it's going to take 3. You have to know that.
It's going to take a little bit longer. But they need to incorporate some safety with that. Otherwise, it's just, I can do that.
This is there's really no word for this other than stupid. And I'm going to say it. It's stupid. Okay, Matt is checking his Facebook status while walking down the stairs, clearly. Or he's updating Instagram, or he's tweeting about something. It took him about 15 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds to walk down the stairs. Whatever that activity was could have waited. And so I don't want to mince words in this thing. It is simply stupid to do this. And we've got to tell the truth, right? So that is not a culture of safety. If I saw that happening at my school, and it's probably one of the reasons why I'm not ahead of school somewhere, I would just simply walk into the office and say, you're done. Look at how long of a staircase that is. Falling from any part of that it would be devastating for most people. So it's clearly not worth it, and we clearly need to pay attention to this, because these trips and falls are 99% preventable. And so this is a great illustration of what not to do. We talked about a culture of safety, you know. Huge. I think that starts from the top.
Yeah, without a doubt.
If the pastor is the leader of the organization, the pastor's got to say it's important. If the superintendent or the head of school is the leader, they've got to say it's important. But beyond just saying it's important, what kind of structures do you think are necessary to get that message out day in and day out at a church or school campus?
I think it's very important that they lead by example. That they go and get a step ladder when reaching above for something high rather than standing on a chair. And it's the example that others see that go further than 10 safety meetings.
Reggie, what do you see out there when you go out and talk about safety committees and things like that? I mean, are people doing a good enough job? And is there some upside?
I think there's upside, Mike, but you know, it's kind of like with driving. You know, you're most familiar with the area right around your own house, and I think it's the same thing with a lot of folks' work environments. They get comfortable, they take shortcuts, and oftentimes that's where when accidents happen. I think the committees are a great opportunity to hear about near misses as well. I mean, we focus so much on the end result and is it really a claim and just how much it's going to cost the organization. But what about all those near misses that might not end up as a claim, but you know what? We can learn something from it.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's probably more near misses than there are injuries, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Forget about all the programs. I mean, you have the programs, you have all the things that are required, and everybody focuses on compliance. But really, it's the meat and potatoes of what's going on around your campus and how employees are behaving in terms of following safety rules. And that is something that you have to incorporate on a daily basis, that safety culture. You know, one of the things that we really don't talk about is the enforcement of our safety program. We have to build a culture of safety, and part of it is enforcing our safety rules. Let's take a look at previous videos that we shot in the past years that illustrates some of the things that we're talking about.
Okay, one of our top 4 ways to avoid getting injured is to simply avoid sports and avoid horseplay. Now, the sports example applies to coaches. The horseplay example applies primarily to youth pastors. But as you see in the video, a soccer coach out doing a full speed demonstration of a technique just blew her Achilles tendon. Every year we have 4 to 6 of these, 4 to 6 ACLs, 4 to 6 rotator cuffs. And a lot of our coaches in our schools are stipended. They're not full-time. They may not even be watching this video right now. Coaches should not be allowed to do full impact, full speed demonstration. The 8 words that send shivers up my spine, let me show you how to do that. No, if you're going to show somebody how to do something in sports, you've got to do it in slow motion. Now, the other thing that we want to do is we want to really monitor our youth programs. Our youth pastors are out there doing all kinds of crazy stuff. They're the least likely to care about safety or risk management, generally. It's probably the furthest thing from their mind. So they're involved in all kinds of extreme activities as well. But it even goes beyond sports and youth activities. It goes out to that teacher that just innocently goes to kick a ball. Maybe it's the only time they've done that in 30 years on the playground, and yet that one time they get hurt. So horseplay, sports, playground, all hazardous places, all places where we need to really work to avoid getting hurt. I think it's worth it to spend just a minute talking about playground safety because we've gone to great lengths over the years to make playgrounds themselves safer. California has strict standards about the type of playgrounds that we can even have. and how they're installed, what kind of surfaces we have to have on those playgrounds. They've done a great job on that protecting kids. But I think staff members maybe aren't getting the message. I see a lot of flip-flops, a lot of sandals, a lot of bad footwear out on these playgrounds. They will lend themselves to tripping and falling. One of the things you really got to be aware of when you're out on the playground is objects that are flying back and forth, like balls and things like that. You see what I'm saying? So you get hit in the head, you turn, you look, boom, right in the head. Or the little kids are all around you and you're not seeing them. They're holding onto your leg, they're behind you, you're walking backwards, and boom, you fall on your back. So the playground is a necessary element of Christian education, especially for the little ones. But as staff members, we got to understand that that part of the campus probably is one of the more hazardous areas that we have, even though it was designed to be safe for kids. So we're going to have to take measures with good footwear and with being aware of our surroundings to make sure we don't get hurt out there. And then last but not least, we got to make sure we're not playing games with the kids. Because in all honesty, when they fall down, they can get up. And you know what happens when we fall down, right? 50-50 maybe, whether we can get up or not. So be safe out there. The playground jobs are important, but they're also among the most hazardous that we have on our campuses. All right, so here's the deal. If we can't get a good culture of safety going in your ministry, one of our top recommendations is going to be to outfit your director of safety with a GoPro. Okay? This way we're going to catch everything on tape. All right? You can't hide anymore. Either you do a culture of safety or this.
Oh boy, last night.
If we can't come up with a proper culture of safety, we've
Yes.
decided that we're going to have one person on campus
Like that?
wearing a GoPro at all. I'm just walking and I'm filming the guy on the golf cart right now. It's incredible. He's actually doing a pretty good job. There may be something to this.
GoPro.
They'd want to avoid the GoPro.
Yes,
right?
at all costs.
You hear this?
Most of them.
Definitely.
I knew this would work, by the way. I knew it would be a great deterrent.
When we talk about heat illness prevention, we always talk about water, shade, and rest, and that's what the law requires. However, we forget that employers are required by law to provide this type of training, and this type of training is very important that we fully understand. We know that it's hot, and we know that it's muggy outside, and we need to drink water, but the law it tries to enforce that issue or that point, and so we need to adhere to those ideas. So it's important to drink water. And how often do we drink water? Well, we're trying to drink water every 15 minutes. And if we have a heat illness symptoms like headache or nausea, dizziness, that sort of thing, then we need to immediately tell our supervisors of those symptoms so something can be done. I always tell people, hey, think of your body as a radiator. If your radiator gets hot and you lose water and you don't replenish that, then what happens is you start to break down. And so in order not to break down or not to get to that issue, you need to drink water on a regular basis every 15 minutes. What you're trying to prevent is heat exhaustion, and the most important is heat stroke. When you suffer from heat stroke, that is an immediate type of an emergency. It has to be taken care of right now. That person needs to be taken away from the heat, strip their clothes off, span them as quickly as possible, adding water if the person is conscious, putting ice under their armpits or in their groin area, and calling 911. That is a life-threatening emergency, and we need to take care of it immediately.
Matt, let's talk briefly about what a school or a church needs to do if there's an injury? I mean, from your standpoint, I mean, why don't you tell me 2 or 3 mistakes they make and give us 2 or 3 examples of best practices post-injury?
One of the mistakes that we find, especially with a long-term employee, and really for all employees with the church or school, is that they are fully ingrained with the mission of the particular campus, and they don't want to do anything that's could be considered negative for that campus or,
Right.
of course, their employer. And so they'll get injured and, oh, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. And they don't report the claim. And then we're 2-3 weeks down the road,
That's
it
a mistake.
hasn't gotten better. And now we're having to go back and try to fix something where if they had reported the injury immediately, we could have gotten their appropriate medical care and probably be resolved at that 3-week mark rather than just starting medical treatment. It also gives the employer the chance to investigate, determine the root cause of the accident, to determine if there's a hazard that we don't know about yet
Okay.
that needs to be addressed.
So what are the specific steps an employer needs to take when there's an injury? I mean, it's got to be reported on a timely level.
It's got to be reported on a timely level. It needs to be investigated
Be
immediately.
investigated, yeah.
Those two things.
Okay.
The investigation doesn't need to be the big drawn out TV investigation.
Right.
Just 10-15 minutes.
Yeah. I should point out too, though, also that if there is an injury that is OSHA reportable, and that ministry has not documented its safety programs and its training and its implementation of these very important issues, that significant fines and regulatory action are possible. We've seen it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So this is something to be taken serious. I mean, look around the room right now. If you're watching this video, how many of you are distracted or not paying attention? You all need to pay attention because it's a critical issue. And I tell you what, the issue of OSHA enforcement and really, being punitive when there's an OSHA reportable injury is very real. Not something that a church or a school is usually prepared for or wants to go through.
Right.
So Gabe and Reggie and Matt are all great resources in that instance, and although those occasions are very rare, we do want to be a resource for any of our clients that has a problem in that area. Okay, so we're with Mike Decker today. He's the Human Resource Administrator for Little Country Church in Redding, California, and the Business Administrator. So Mike, thanks for being a part of this today. And the reason we asked you to give some of your insights into workers' comp and safety and risk management is because you've been through a little bit of a wintertime with those issues. Back in 2010, your X-mod was 72%. And in 2013, due to a couple of incidents, it peaked out at 149%.
Yeah.
And now you're back down into the 70s. So talk about that ride and talk about what caused it and then talk about the financial impact to the ministry, both on the way up and on the way down.
There were very, very simple accidents. One was one of our custodians was moving tables by himself, and it's a rule here that you don't move tables unless there's 2 of you. Another one was a teacher was throwing footballs with the kids, and they know they're not supposed to participate in the sport, but he did, and that ended up a rotator cuff operation.
Right.
And then the worst one of all was a child care daycare worker was taking our children down to the children's playground and our sports field.
Right.
And it was gravel, and the person slipped and fell, but that accelerated into a $240,000 bill.
Wow. So really, your church has not had many claims at all, but you had three interesting claims. You had a lower back and shoulder. You had an athletic injury with a teacher that was throwing a football. Seemed pretty simple, but they got a bad rotator cuff. Then you had a slip and fall, and those all wound up causing your XMOD to go from 72% to 149%. Did you make any changes in your safety training program or your safety messaging?
Well, the slip and fall, we covered the gravel with asphalt.
Okay.
And made it solid. And we put up a rail. The table incident, we just reinforce it more often in our safety meetings, and the teachers know better than to play sports with the children.
Okay.
And that goes to all the camps and everything. Whoever's in charge of any of them is not allowed to participate in it. We've kind of cleaned it up pretty good.
So you've taken some corrective action, and that's great. So now your XMOD's down in the 70s again?
That's right.
What's that feel like?
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
And the dividends were excellent this year. Excellent.
Good. So, well, we appreciate your insights, Mike. It sounds like you just had three claims. You took corrective action on all three. You kind of gutted it out through that time period where you had a big experience modification increase, and now it's back down again. And the world in that way is just a little bit better. So, Mike, this is a great question. With the dividends that you're enjoying now from a lower XMOD plus dividends from Cornerstone, and how's that helped enhance the ministry?
It helps our budget, definitely.
Yeah,
and
right.
So it even lowers it more than we thought because of the dividends spread out over the year, reduces our current, which is down to 78. So that's excellent. And yes, it helps out all the way.
Good.
And so those times when we were in the high mod and struggling is making up for it pretty quick.
Good. Fantastic. Well, I think it's probably a good time to wrap up, guys. Really enjoyed this today. You've seen some new footage and new ideas today, combined with some of our greatest hits from years past. But I think the message really is the same, and that is that the area of workplace safety and workers' comp is crucial. It's a big part of your budget. What you pay for this insurance is really up to you. You can pay as much or as little as is warranted based on your accident record as a ministry. And so it now becomes a stewardship issue, because as we talk about wise ways to spend God's money and God's resources, tuition, tithes and offerings and things that come into our ministry, we don't want to be spending unnecessarily on workers' comp. So this is truly something that you can control, and really it is all about good stewardship, not just monetary stewardship, but stewardship of people. And a culture of safety is how you're going to achieve these goals. And at Dermanimal Insurance Group, what we want to do is be a resource for you in every way, from training to information to consultations with you on a variety of risk management topics and subjects. So thank you for being here. Best of luck to you, and God's blessings as you begin another school year. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you soon out on your campuses.